so much for coming. I'm Thea. This is my co-founder, Emily. I think by now we've met all of you. But welcome to Berardinelli. Big shout out to the guys here who have let us use this space free of charge and have been very gracious in welcoming us into their home. So big props to them.
Yes.
We are also known as the Styx Chyx, which is the name of our pending nonprofit status nonprofit. And for those
that
of
paperwork,
you,
guys.
Oh,
that
yeah.
paperwork.
That's for another night. For those of you who may not know what that means, or what we're maybe like a girl band or something, it's in reference to the river Styx, which in ancient Greek mythology was the river that it was believed one had to cross to enter into the underworld. So it's got that fun little death nod, which is kind of what we're all about. We're very casual. This presentation will be very casual. We're super excited to have Peter with us. In the vein of being casual, we somehow ended up without a clicker. So we do have a presentation, but we'll be doing a lot of this to kind of move us from slide to slide. Really quick overview of what tonight will look like, and we will get you out of here, I think, before 7 even. So we don't expect this to be a long evening, but quick intro from us, the book talk, the meat of the presentation from Mr. Callan. We'll do a quick walkthrough of something called the 5 wishes, which we'll explain when we get there. I think that'll be really exciting. Leave some time for Q&A, and then get you off to your fancy dinners or whatever is going on.
We apologize now. We are former corporate-aholics that are trying to recover from that, but we can't get rid of PowerPoint. So we just can't. So we're working on it, guys. We're working on it.
Even without a clicker,
we're still can't do it.
Yeah, so some background about the organization and how it came to be. Emily and I actually met in Chile in South America earlier, I was going to say this year, but in 2019, we met in April. And we were traveling through South America and then back up to North America. We landed in Mexico in the end. And during the course of what was 4 months of traveling together, actually, we really learned a lot about each other's backgrounds and experiences related to the topics of death and dying. So we bonded over the fact that both of us lost parents. We each lost a parent in our 20s. And that really, I think, kind of brought us together and got us talking about why we don't talk about it. That was probably one of the first conversations we had, was like, it took us a while for us to learn this about each other, and we're not really talking to other people about it as much as we kind of like to, and maybe there's something there. So we decided to host a workshop with our fellow travelers. And what do we call it? What WTF is death?
Yeah, WTF is death.
Yeah, so what the fudge is death? So that was our first workshop, and it was very open-ended and kind of an organic, let's just chat, what are people thinking about? I think the age range of the people there was between 24 and 46, so that, and about 13 people or so. And it was a really good group and a good opportunity for us to kind of feel what it would be like to facilitate those kinds of discussions. Hello, welcome. Hello, hello. One of them is related to me, so she gets a free pass. And from that came this organization. We also had a chance to attend Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead, in Mexico in early November. And that, I think, kind of summed up or kind of embodied for us what we wanted our approach to this work to be. So for those maybe not as familiar with Dia de Muertos, it's an opportunity to celebrate the dead. It's a festival or a night, really, a party, where you welcome the souls of the deceased back into their homes. And so it's beautiful, villages and towns all over the country have these marigold petals that are strewn because it's said that this bright orange attracts the souls back to where they want to party for the night. So we kind of took part in that and said, hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's keep having parties. Hence the name AfterParty. We're calling this event series an AfterParty because we like to party. Yeah. And actually, something that we've realized is that since the death of our parents, we are actually more fun. Like, we prioritize fun more. And I don't know, maybe that sounds strange, but if you think about it, when you really are confronted with how short life is, you want to spend every minute having as much fun as possible. So we are committed to that.
We never miss after parties.
Never miss an after party.
One of the things, I don't know if Thea mentioned, we both live in other separate parts of the U.S. I'm based in Austin, Texas. Thea lives in the Bay Area, and we chose to really do the launching of our nonprofit here in the land of enchantment. We both, as we feel very deeply connected to Mexico and the culture there, we came to realize through our travels that we both had a deep connection here as well. So it feels very special to us to be able to be having our first events here, to be strategizing business plans, and really, taking a passion and turning it into something wonderful. So I wanted to just give you guys that little bit of info as well.
So before we get into the book talk, a couple things. First of all, we're dying, wink wink, to know, what would you like to get out of tonight? If there's any particular aspect of end-of-life planning that is interesting to you, so we can be sure to answer that as we continue. Christine?
Well, I just think it's important to have your paperwork in order so your children are not floundering.
Yeah, having paperwork in order so that your children aren't kind of floundering at the end. Definitely some of the tactical aspects of end-of-life planning. Perfect.
We got you covered.
Anything else? Okay, all right. No problem. When we hosted our first event in Mexico, I mentioned
no clue what was going to happen.
Yeah, very open-ended. It was just kind of this, let's see what this becomes type of workshop. And we decided that we needed a couple of guidelines at the beginning just to kind of say who we are as much as, like, who we're not as much as who we are. So I don't know if this is as applicable to today, but we thought we'd keep them anyway. The first is that we're not therapists and this is not a support group, but we are committed to being a group of supportive people. So we'll just keep that in mind as we go through tonight. And if there are moments that are emotional and you need to step outside, please do. If there's something that you're uncomfortable with, please tell us. Opinions, thoughts, and feelings are all welcome. We're also wanting to kind of keep it moving, and so if there's some topics that come up and it doesn't quite make sense in the moment, or we want to Peter wants to finish a train of thought, we might just ask that we table those until the end, because we can have an after party, we can hang out, we can keep the conversation going. So we found Peter through Gail Rubin's Before I Die festival. This is Gail in front, the doyenne of death, who is your New Mexico expert. Anybody death questions? Gail Rubin, yes. And so we were looking at this amazing festival that we unfortunately were not able to attend because we were in Old Mexico at the time instead of New Mexico. But Peter's book jumped out because it really kind of talks about something we're passionate about, which is owning our deaths. Not just like becoming, comfortable with the idea that everyone in this room will die, but also the idea of ownership, of, how much control can we have over something that is inevitable. And so there are a couple of quotes of Peter's that definitely jumped out of us. This one, do your peeps a solid, leave them a roadmap. That's kind of what tonight is about. That's what the book is about. It's always too soon until it's too late. This is totally easy stuff to put off, but then, maybe the kids are floundering if you put it off too long, right? It's always too soon until it's too late. This one I love, live with integrity, die with dignity. Absolutely. And then the last one is a bit of an inside joke, but when we reached out to Peter at first, we're not a well-known organization. He wrote back and he said, I'm not feeling like this whole thing is legit. So we hope that now that we're co-presenting in a funeral home together on the topic of death, we've, become
just wanted to make
legit.
sure I wasn't getting punked.
Absolutely.
We laughed so hard when he wrote that in.
That was humbling and wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, we got to the next one. Perfect. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Peter Callan, who wrote the book that we are promoting tonight. Welcome to the
Thank
stage.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't deserve that yet, so maybe afterwards. Hi.
Hello.
First thing I want to say is I'm not an attorney, so I don't or cannot give legal advice. I'm a certified paralegal and a survivor, and those things combined led me to feeling compelled to write a book after my oldest brother died unexpectedly. He had served the country as a career Marine and developed a severe case of PTSD, and I got a phone call one morning that he had passed in a fairly dramatic and violent manner. So you find yourself scrambling to make plane reservations and fly across the country and get together and be with family. And upon arrival, it occurred to me almost immediately that despite the fact that I'd gone to college, that I'd traveled the world, that I'd bought and sold a couple of houses, that I'd opened and closed businesses, I didn't have one single clue how many death certificates to order. How did you place an obituary? I knew nothing about death. Nobody talks about it. Not in church, not in school, not in wherever you might get this kind of information. So almost immediately I thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to gather this information. I'm going to keep track of it, and I'm going to be of service to others, because if I don't know any of this, then none of my friends know this. None of the other people, otherwise we would have talked about it over time. So over time I just kept notes and ideas, and I purposefully earned my certification as a paralegal so I could write the book with some authority other than experience. And here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I maybe give a little bit of information. So we have a few of the examples. So with Peter's personality, when we kind of learned a little bit about him, we were like, he gets us. He gets what we're after. And here's a cover of his book, the noir version.
So when I wrote the book, I wanted to present it in a way that took the sting out of it, that was a little bit irreverent without being inappropriate. I wanted to be able to laugh at myself and have others allow themselves to laugh at themselves, kind of lighten up. We're all headed for the same place. Not to take ourselves overly seriously, but that ultimately leaving a roadmap for your loved ones is about the nicest thing you can do other than a big fat insurance policy. Both is great. So I presented it I worked with a graphic artist and developed this cover because this was my take on it. This is how I wanted people to, and I guess we could pass that around. Yeah. And then a dear friend of mine and my family's owned an independent bookstore where I first put the book on a shelf in Taos, New Mexico. It was called Moby Dickens. And she happened to be dying of cancer. And I mean, I've known Susan since I was in diapers. So she was like, sweetheart, this is great if you want the information, but if you need the information, this cover might be a little over the top. So I designed another cover. And for those who needed a more sensitive approach to the exact same content, the interior content of both covers is exactly the same. This is a sunrise in Miami Beach. So it's nice and colorful, but it's very sort of placid and easier to... in the book...
Say what the two titles are.
Well, the first one is Prepare to Die.
It sounds like a play.
Well, it was meant to reflect sort of a 1950s B-movie,
You got that.
yeah, good, that was my intention. The more subtle cover is called Preparing for the Inevitable. Get your shit together, basically. And I wanted to take a really comprehensive approach and just help people along with, first of all, if you die intestate, if you die without a will, you die intestate. In the state of New Mexico, probate court can and will take up to 5 years. So in addition to exacerbating and dragging out the grief, it also can cost a lot of money. If you have a last will and testament, if you have an advanced healthcare directive, if you have a power of attorney, you're just going to be a lot better off. Well, not you personally, but your loved ones who are having to deal with your stuff. So in the book, I've created draft forms of last will and testament, advanced healthcare directives, and financial powers of attorney. I also have a couple pages of definitions where I also wrote the book in as user-friendly and easy access as possible. It wasn't important to me to use big words and have people think I was smart. I wanted to use words that people understood and related to. So the book addresses everything from estate planning, property and wills, trusts and living trusts, minimizing probates, identifying a personal representative or executor, healthcare issues, DNR, do not resuscitate, guardianship concerns, non-traditional family concerns, pet trusts, organ donation, prepaid memorial service and burial policies, and on and on. So that, I mean, everybody's got a computer, everybody's got several different accounts. Where are your passwords? How are your people going to access and shut things down and close things off and tighten things up? So my intent, and I believe the results, are a pretty thorough, comprehensive guide that allows you to prepare for your own eventual demise, and or when you're the one in the family that has to get on a plane and fly to Madison because Aunt Tilly passed and it's your turn, then you have a little guide to help you. What do I do first? What do I do second? That kind of a thing.
Nailed it. That's
Yeah.
that's exactly what you've done. And what's also really great, beyond the book that Peter's created and him getting his paralegal degree, he also helps people through this process.
Oh yeah.
So he also can come and help someone that is actually going through the process. But in an event that we just did in Los Alamos, we had someone that said, I have dear friends that haven't had these conversations. I'm going to prepay for them, for you to come, work with them. You've got such a great approach. You're easy to talk to. This is what I'm going to do for them. And that's, such a cool thought in my mind of how you can take care of the people you love. And Peter,
it was a beautiful, very generous effort that this gal made, and said that she and her husband basically were all set with themselves, but she had friends that needed help getting their stuff done, and it was important enough for her to prepay me to help them do that. So I will sit down with them as a certified paralegal and a notary public and walk them through all the documents and help them fill in the blanks and get all that paperwork together so that they're all set. So not only, workshops, one-on-ones, conferences, whatever people, need. The other thought is whether you ultimately need help or not, if you decide you want to see an attorney anyway, in going through this book and doing the work, if you walk into an attorney's office with familiarity of terms and you've got a lot of stuff pulled together, it's a lot quicker and easier, and frankly doesn't cost as much money. And it can be very expensive working with attorneys. So this is not a shortcut, and anything in writing is better than nothing at all. So it's just an opportunity to kind of gather your ducks and let people know what you want.
Yeah. So if there's any thoughts or questions, please feel free to bring them forward. We also have done a little bit of Mythbusters to help us have some interactivity as well. But I wanted to kind of stop, and now that we've kind of given you the overview of Peter and the book and what its value and purpose is, I want to open up the floor.
Peter, I'm curious if the book talks about, or if you've investigated for yourself green burials?
Yes, indeed.
Is that covered
There
in
is
the book?
a section, a chapter on green burials in there. And at the end of the book, I have gone to great lengths to pull together lots and lots of resources so that if I didn't answer your question, you can go to the back of the book and look in my reference section, and there is more than one green burial website. Or a link to somebody that will lead you to that. And green burials are becoming more popular, so you can almost Google it. Or you could ask Gail, she knows everything. Yes? Oh, Oscar.
There's still people around that say, well, if I die, I'll.
If.
Yeah, if I die, yeah. Right,
They're not ready when they're thinking that.
Right.
That's for sure.
yeah, that happens all the time.
Excuse me, I didn't read.
Yeah,
I was under the impression that the power of attorney only works for the person who have the power of attorney while they're alive. And when
yeah.
they die, you no longer have power.
It's null and void. Powers of attorney are only effective when the individual who has appointed power of attorney is alive. And there are different kinds of powers of attorney. There are specific powers of attorney, there are general powers of attorney, there are durable powers of attorney. Durable refers to if you as an individual are incapacitated, it allows someone to make financial decisions on your behalf. But let's say you've got a big job and you have to be in London to sign the papers, and your house is getting ready to close. So you created power of attorney specifically for your friend Emily to sign for you for that specific cause. Let's say nobody anticipates being in an accident and not being able to walk or being in a coma, but in the event that that happens, it's not a bad idea to have someone lined out to cover your ass, basically. Pay the rent, figure out what to do with the dog, that kind of stuff. Fly relatives in, whatever it takes. Yes.
I have a question, Peter.
Yep.
I have settled my estate plan and everything and have a last will and testament, but things have changed
Mhm.
because somebody passed away
Sure.
and I left something too.
Sure.
So do I need to go back to the attorney to change it?
Well, you don't have to. You can create something called a codicil, and that's something that I can actually help you with, or it's also something that you can Google. So a codicil is an addendum to a will. Some people, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I laughed because they were embarrassed because they had done a will 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and everything had changed.
Yes.
And they were like, God, I have to start all over again. I was like, it's okay, doesn't hurt, you can do that. So,
Thank you.
yeah, sure.
So it costs less to do a codicil than to.
Typically, yeah. I mean, an attorney is going to charge you a lot less to do a codicil rather than rewriting an entire set of paperwork. It's just a simple one-page, typically a one-page, depending on how many changes you have. Yes?
Peter, in your book, do you talk about the option of donating your body to science?
Yes, indeed.
Good.
There's a chapter on that, and again, in the reference section, I think there's 3 or 4 options.
Very good.
Yeah.
You gotta do the paperwork before you die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really,
Good point. Yeah, it seems so, yeah, just duh, but nope, you gotta think about it now.
I mean, literally, and maybe it's just because it's in my blood. I was on the computer this morning because I realized I had a life insurance policy thing changed that was associated with the checking account. And I had to cancel that for silly reasons. So, but it was stated in my will so that not only was my brother listed as my beneficiary on this joint account that we have, but it was in the will structured in such a way, and that was no longer valid. And instead of confusing people or complicating things, I was able to clean that up. So it can be that easy.
Something you'd mentioned the last time we were talking is that it's a smart thing to kind of get into the idea of reviewing it every year.
Yeah.
Because your own ideas might change.
Yeah.
You as what you thought you wanted, even in your own right, might
Yeah.
change, and then also your decisions that around you might have circumstances might have changed.
Circumstances change all the time. I mean, it doesn't matter who, but there's a well-known radio personality in northern New Mexico, Nancy Stapp, and she's interviewed me a number of times on the radio, and she and her girlfriends get together right around Dias de los Muertos every year, and they just review their stuff.
Oh, fun.
It's a planned
That's
wine and
amazing.
cheese, so yeah, there are different avenues to getting the work done. More than one way to skin a cat. Yeah.
If I don't want to see an attorney to make a will, can I
Right.
do those online? What do you think about those online
Well,
ones?
the online, I mean, they're perfectly acceptable. People do it all day, every day. I prefer you buy my book than to go online.
Oh, so.
I have form documents in the book that you can actually fill in the blanks if you wanted to, have it signed and witnessed and notarized, and that's legal and legit.
You just sold me your book.
Oh, good. That doesn't necessarily mean that, that's what you want to do, but it's that easy.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering
Yeah.
if it is.
Yeah, and if you feel, and I can help you with creating that document in a cleaner fashion than filling in the blanks on a form doc. But I put form docs in there to get people acquainted with the kind of information that they need to gather and what is required and what's necessary.
And the state laws change and things, the
Yeah.
forms change. So Peter is so fantastic that he's updating this. This is October 2019. That is the latest edition
Right.
that he's put forward of the book. And so,
Well, as self-published, I order 100 books every time I sell 100 books. And I get on the computer and clean up whatever needs to be changed in terms of New Mexico state statutes, so I try to stay on top of it with every edition of the book itself. Currently, I have template forms that are New Mexico state statute, Advanced Healthcare Directive, and Power of Attorney. And I'm offering a complimentary copy of either one of those with the purchase of a book tonight. FYI.
Naomi, did you have something?
I did. I don't know if this is off topic, but my mom has long-term care insurance.
Yeah.
And I recently was home for Christmas and we pulled out the documents and she showed it to me and I asked, is this legit? Because so I'm curious to hear your opinion about these types of insurances.
Well,
I don't know if that's outside of your scope.
Well, I mean, it's not something that I do frequently or often. The one thing I know for sure is she in a place, does she know who sold her the policy?
I mean, she had the paperwork and.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but is it a small town and she knows the insurance agent and you can easily pick up the phone and sort of sort through questions? You don't know, yeah. So I would say the easiest and best way to do that is find out. It works for a lot of people.
I mean, she's not needing to use it yet, it's more she was helping me understand in case.
That she has it available.
Right, and
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it like, it sounds too good to be true, she gets
Yeah.
$2,000 a month, whether
Yeah.
it's in-house or whether
Yeah.
it's at a facility,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they can be really incredible and life-saving.
And part of my question is, have you seen somebody use it in your work?
Yeah, sure. I'm thinking of my grandmother for some reason right now, but I mean, Prudence O'Connor. I mean, the names, family friend Alice Arredondo. I mean, people buy those things for a reason, and they're not bad to have. And if somebody's lucky enough to have paid for one and saved you that expense that's going to cover them, then I would do whatever research on the front side to, make sure that you're plugged into knowing what you need to know.
Yeah, and it's an insurance company, so they're gonna do everything they can also to
Right.
not have to do that. It's actually, we just attended a death cafe hosted by Gail in
Yeah.
Albuquerque on Sunday, and this topic came up. And it was actually, I was quite shocked, and as we were in a room and the stories started to unfold. And so I think understand, be ready to deal with an insurance company and know what you're trying to achieve with that policy. Because they might say, well, you're willing and able to take care of her, so you take care of her, versus allowing the policy to kick in and do its job. So that's, the only other thing beyond, it's there to do the good, but I think you have to look at who you're dealing with.
Right, well, and it's just another preemptive, the more you know on the front end, as opposed to responding emotionally and distraught and stressed, and you just kind of knee jerk and you sign and you pay and you want to get through it. It's like be armored up. Yeah.
That's precisely what I was thinking of just now, when you think of the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
That the scene where, John Goodman says, hey, just because we're bereaved doesn't
Right.
make us saps.
Right.
So it's like, that's
Right.
why I
Well, and I gotta tell you, firsthand experience, my grandmother prepaid a burial policy in 2002. And when she died, and she paid like $4,000. And when she died 10 years later, the same exact benefit package would have cost $12,000.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
For those of us that, so in taking care of it herself and paying for it, it alleviated the burden of the higher expense and having to, come up with the money and put it out there, yeah.
If you get, like perpetual care or something like that, does it account for just like the burial went up a factor of 3, that care is gonna go up a factor of 3.
Well,
And therefore, do you get the same amount of money, but that money won't go as far as
whatever you agree to and pay for and sign, that is always locked in.
the amount?
Yeah, that's one of the unless it's, that's one of the, it's like buying a forever stamp, right? And you pay 50 cents, and then it goes up to 52, and 54, and 56. You bought all of them when they were 50 cents. So it doesn't matter how much it goes up. You paid for what you need and what you've agreed to.
And that can be for funeral arrangements in a cemetery as well as for the funeral arrangements with the funeral home. Those are usually two separate costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
burial and funerals.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if it's a policy that every year it could go up,
Well,
and it does. At the lab, the one they had,
Oh.
it went up big time.
oh, did it?
Yeah, I had one
Yeah.
that was, I don't know, I was lucky on that.
Was it? Yeah, I don't know.
Mine stayed the whole time.
It's through the human resources at the Los Alamos labs, and
I
they,
researched
yeah,
about 3, but
yeah.
I was just
I mean, there's
lucky.
always going to be minutia, I would imagine, but I always say, call the 1-800 number, you know,
I
get
slept
the facts, yeah.
remember better for having it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's
Yeah,
insurance,
yes, sir.
I'd like to not, but
Have you
was-
decided, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah,
Have you decided how you're going to want to have your body disposed of?
yes,
Are you willing to share that with us?
sure. I came to learn that green burials were the least impactful for the environment, but somehow or another, I just can't imagine getting wrapped in cloth and sort of put in the ground. I really want to be cremated, mostly because I want my survivors to go either somewhere in the Caribbean or Hawaii and get out on a boat and have a bunch of drinks and just dump me over the edge, all those ashes, you know.
Well, a friend of mine whose husband died, she lived on the North Shore of Hawaii.
Yeah,
Her son took the urn and the ashes out and scattered them into the ocean, and flowers and everything.
yeah,
But
that's what they
by
do.
the time he returned the canoe to the house, the ashes were in front of the house.
Oh,
No.
interesting,
They
yeah,
came back on the way.
Yeah. yeah,
Wow.
kind of cool.
So it was like he didn't want to leave.
Yeah, that's a nice story.
This is before the passing.
Yeah,
And that's the DNR. Do you address in your book that for the relatives to know that if they do not have that immediately available at the time of a crisis,
then
what will
it
happen
can
is
be
they will not-
ineffective.
You can't just tell them that this is the way it is. If you
Yeah,
don't
no,
have
I
a
learned,
physical copy of it with you at that exact moment.
I think the refrigerator is the standard sort of, you know, if you have if you're at home sickly and terminal, the standard rule is a DNR on the refrigerator makes all the difference in the world. And I think, and I learned the hard way with the next door neighbor who had been dying and didn't want to be resuscitated and
Right.
really wanted to be just let go. And in a panic, another neighbor called 911, and this 92-year-old woman who didn't want to be resuscitated was, you know, stripped of her nightgown by the EMTs by state law, and, you know, tried to be revived. Had she seen her doctor and gotten a DNR and had it on the refrigerator, that wouldn't have happened.
Or that the relatives keep it.
Oh, yeah, no.
Just like a driver's license in your purse, because if
Absolutely.
you're, you know, in a crisis, you're at the hospital and they say, do you have a DNR? If you don't have that physically, then
Yeah,
you will not
that's
listen.
absolutely true. Again, prepared. Are you prepared?
Maybe a tattoo.
I
Yeah.
I might add that I have a refrigerator with a wood door, and it won't stick to that.
Oh.
So I have it stuck on the wall right next to my bed, my
Yeah.
DNR.
Can't miss it.
Because
So your family knows.
and the family is, yeah, it's in a bright color.
Yeah, they're green.
Blimey.
Yeah. And, I mean, they're really easily available.
The firemen, I think they have them at the.
They do, and I just saw my doctor a couple weeks ago, and there was a stack of them. So,
There's no reason not to have
there's
them.
no, yeah.
Do you need that like notarized or anything, or you just have to?
DNR,
sign it?
no, I've never heard anything about a notarization
You
for a
just
DNR. I
have
just
it,
think it's an
sign it.
order that you complete and sign. Yeah.
Do you have one in your book?
No, but they're super easy to get, and if you, but thanks, I'll put one in there.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you have the most form, the New Mexico?
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
That's the green one.
Say that
So-
again, the what form?
It's most
Medical orders for
Scope of treatment.
scope of
scope of treatment, right? Thank you. Yeah.
They handed them out 2 years ago when you had your conference here.
Yeah,
They were handing them out to the audience, and I got 4 copies. That's how I found out about them.
Yeah.
And does your book cover dying at home?
Yes. There's a little piece in there. A lot of it, I wanted it to be not necessarily short and sweet, but I didn't want people to feel, bogged down in, oh God, it's so much and it's so intense and, I kind of hit stuff, think about this, think about that, check this out, if it's not enough information, Google it, ask your doctor. So, but I try to be fairly comprehensive in all the little bits and pieces that can come up that people don't think of.
Yeah, home deaths are becoming more and more popular.
And not all the states are comfortable with it, so that was
Yeah.
part of what I was curious about.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a consolation at all, but having been a paramedic for about 20 years, I can tell you that when it's obvious that, that without a DNR, that there's no reason to continue, once the doors of the ambulance shut,
Yeah.
everybody just calms down.
Everybody calms
You get
down.
at the hospital, you put the show back
Right,
on,
right.
and,
Yeah.
it's better to have.
I literally have chills as I remember my personal exact experience with Thelma and Helen. They lived behind me, and they'd been next door neighbors for 40 years, and late 80s and early 90s, and Thelma decided she was done, and she quit eating, and she quit taking her medication, and she was just going to wrap it up, and I didn't know anything about a DNR at the time. And when the 911 people, kind of got in there, and it was this intense, and I understood, or I found out, that by law they were required to resuscitate or attempt to resuscitate. But gosh, was it rough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of broken ribs.
Yeah.
It's ugly.
Ugh.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The baseline that I learned when I did the death doula training was if you're in hospice or at the place where you're wanting to die,
yeah,
don't call,
right,
because the purpose of,
Right.
which is what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
right.
Such a
People
good
get nervous
thought.
and panic.
Yeah.
And it's such a gut response, so the
Yeah,
piece of being able to have the conversation
sure.
to say, this isn't.
Are you a death doula?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Are you, do you know Gail? No, okay. Well, you guys should talk because there's a network of primarily women, I think, but
it's mostly
in
women.
town that they have a great presentation, and you've just had something online that I watched recently. So it's a burgeoning profession, and I think a lot more people are turning on to it all the time. So.
But the truth is that we're all death doulas.
Oh well, yeah. Well,
You had a great, yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's just now we're putting a term to it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's great. Well, maybe we'll move on to the Mythbusters, and questions still keep going, but just to keep us moving along. So this is what we said is a little bit of a lighthearted game with some serious topics that we're talking about. Some of them actually already were covered, so we'll be able to click through those. This is one that we actually were just, Peter had mentioned earlier. I'm curious if anyone has a thought of what they think is about the number of death certificates they would need to be ordering.
20.
More than you think you need.
Always.
Ding, 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 ding.
Always more.
People, I didn't know. I don't know, 5. What happens is you have to wait because you need to order them. And by the time they get there, in that time frame, you've learned that you need at least twice as many as you thought you did. Creditors and lots of other people want certified copies. And so that by the time you figure out that you need a lot more, it takes longer and it often costs more. So just be preemptive and,
Yeah, even like Verizon's gonna possibly
yeah,
heckle you down for one.
Yeah.
Depending, I mean, we've heard those types of stories. So, yeah.
When I shut down my father-in-law's estate, I helped with that, and I was calling the credit cards to shut down his credit cards. And I offered to send death certificates, and they were like, no, a copy's fine.
wow.
Yeah,
Well, that's unusual, I think.
really.
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, but, once again, better to be in front of it than
Yeah.
behind it.
Sometimes they send it back to you.
Oh,
Once I guess they get it registered into their system, yeah.
it's really, yeah. And this actually was just discussed. So when can you use a power of attorney? And what this one was specifically about, it's only good when the person is alive that has requested for that power of attorney. Peter did suggest an option, and I think, is there another one? Click, that you can do things like, that will be like a POD, paid on death. So there's other ways that you can incorporate, the appropriate transitions of things like your bank account.
Yeah, for simple stuff that you wouldn't necessarily consider. Maybe you don't want a co-owner on your checking account. Banks don't typically offer this, but when you open an account, or you could go to your bank, tomorrow and say, hey, I want a TOD or a POD on my checking and savings account, transfer on death or pay on death. And then you identify whoever you want to be in receipt of your funds. And there's just not a lot of malarkey then. It's on record, you have it in your will, and you go to the bank and boom, boom. Same thing with real estate. Transfer on death deeds are really, really significantly important and save a lot of time and money if you have a transfer on death deed. If you've got a property that's paid for, and you have a transfer on death deed to whomever you're gonna pass that on to, it's enormous time and money saving. Oh, okay.
Well, I've got a trust, and I got everything, my bank account and everything else, they're all in the trust.
Right.
The house, everything.
So, okay, so your trustee is gonna handle your stuff and you should be all set. Yeah, so that's one way to do it, yeah.
And we
Until
also-
somebody objects.
Yeah.
Well, until somebody objects, that's always the case, which is the nightmare. A lot of this stuff too is, and everybody probably knows this, the ability to try to diminish family squabbles and upset. The more clear you are about what you want and who gets what and all that kind of stuff, hopefully, potentially, the less negativity and fighting and squabbling and stuff. Oh.
Yes, Oscar.
Somebody, I heard, I don't know if it's true, but somebody had, do not resuscitate, and they claimed that a relative can cancel that by objecting to it.
Well,
Is that true?
Not technically, no. The truth is also that doctors can decide that they're they have their own spiritual beliefs, and they try to impose their belief systems too, but legally, that's not. The DNRs exist for a reason, and they're backed up by law.
Okay.
But yeah, you do hear of those scenarios where family members come in and there is a lot of, time that a lot of confusion created when you have many people that are trying to circumvent something like that. But having it is, I think, a very important component to this. All right, this one's one curious. What do you guys think when it comes to car titles? When you have a listed for where it's going, is it and or is it or?
In my experience, it's and/or. So it can be either or.
Oh,
And
but
that's yeah.
talk about cars that are leased.
I don't know much about that.
Oh,
Is that a icky nightmare?
it can be, because sometimes if you have the decedent has a car leased to their name, whoever is their heir or like spouse has to keep paying that lease
Oh, yeah.
until it's paid off. You can't just turn the car back in and stop paying on the lease.
Yeah.
I heard something about credit cards. They claim to me, they write all that, we got a collection agent. They say they're not a collection agency. Because my wife had, one card in her name. And they say, you don't have to pay it, but then they go with all these other things. And it really made it sound like I didn't have to pay it if I didn't want to.
So did you?
Well, I did it because it was an honest purchase. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna cheat people.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But I mean, it really sounds like in New Mexico, you can have a $4,000 credit card, your wife can have that, and she dies, you don't have to pay it.
oh, I've never, I don't know. Lucky you.
But it's
You know.
funny how they said they were just helping out the credit card company, they weren't collection agencies, but they were collection agencies. They just turn you over to a collection agency, and they write their kind of legalese stuff. But they have to put in, you don't have to pay.
Mom, would you write down car lease, and what was the other thing that I said, oh, I gotta do that? Oh,
Have the most,
DNR in the
the
book,
most documentation.
a DNR form, yeah,
in the book.
thanks.
All right, this one is talking about kind of the difference between an attorney and for an end-of-life planning. And one of the things that Peter had, shared with us when we were looking at this one is kind of considering the cost and what the needs are. And one thing that Peter said is if you can Google it, that's gonna tell you a lot if you really need to go to an attorney. And also your toothache example, I
Yeah.
think, is really helpful.
Well, if you've got a toothache and you've had it for more than a week, go to the dentist,
If it goes away tomorrow.
Right. I'm not suggesting that people don't, see lawyers. I mean, some people have to because they just feel better. And then they write checks for $1,500. So if that's what you need to do to feel good and you can afford it, go for it. It's not necessarily anything in writing that's witnessed and notarized is better than nothing at all. So again, yeah.
I'm based down in Roswell, and unfortunately, Tom Dunlap, who was a local attorney, passed not too long ago, and what he would do is every year, he'd go into the local adult center or the senior circle, and he would provide free legal advice to senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible, and unfortunately, that hasn't been replaced since his passing, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there would be an attorney or something that would do something
Well-
like that here.
You don't find free services
Yeah, I
very
know.
often.
Yeah, occasionally there are entities that do that kind of thing, but, you can always call the UNM Law School and see if they're connected with a group that,
The agency for the aged.
Yeah, that's down at
Yeah.
the state library, I've been there too.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, this next one, it got mentioned a bit, but any guesses on how long probate can take?
Depends on your assets.
It could take up to 5 years.
In the state of New Mexico, probate can take up to 5 years. And it's really at the probate judge's discretion. So the more prepared you are, the better your surviving loved ones are.
So in other words, if you're going to leave your children a house, you should deed it over before you die.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
without question.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can only do that if it's paid off.
Mhm.
You can only do a transfer on death deed if it's paid, but there are other ways to get around it. And that's when an attorney might come in useful to hammer out the specifics.
Okay, before we move on, can I ask
Sure,
I don't have any people, like it's me,
yeah,
so this hasn't felt super urgent, do you know? Like,
yeah,
I have a car, I have
Yeah.
a retirement account, that
yeah.
So, I don't know, if you could just kind of talk a little bit about that, what it
Well,
means to be one of the survivors.
did we talk on the phone
No.
ever? No, okay.
Do you remember us talking on the
My card, yeah.
Somebody, I think I do.
Dreams,
Yeah.
dear.
No, somebody called me a few months ago and essentially said the same thing. And the only thing I could think of was identify a charity that you're in love with and that you want to help support. And livinglandsandwaters.com are my heroes. Chad Pergrecki in Illinois cleans up rivers and streams all over the country. He's won lots of national attention and awards for it. But I can't imagine, so everybody's got their gig, so.
But I guess in part what I'm asking is there a different route in my will if it's a human versus if it's an organization?
I mean, it's only in the identification process, so, you know, whomever you bequeath items or money to is the recipient. As long as you have somebody to process, an attorney, an accountant. I mean, you can, you know, if you don't have family or a bestie, then you can identify somebody and pay them to do the work.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's less that it just hasn't felt like an urgent thing. I'm
Yeah,
getting
well,
older,
it never
it's
feels
fine,
urgent
but-
until it's too late.
Yeah, but
And then you think, well, who cares?
What?
I think you're bringing up a great point. I mean, less people are getting married and, you know, and there's a lot of more people living independently and I think it's lots of times you get to wondering about these. I've wondered, I've got my parents still around, but, I mean, in the event that they didn't exist, I mean, I've contemplated what you're saying, like your concerns. So, I mean, but.
I guess, not that you know, I'm not judging whether it's legit or not. Of course it is, but I think I worked too hard for whatever I have accumulated or paid for in terms of retirement or life insurance, and, you know, by God, you know, I intend for the people to get it that I love. And if I don't love, then it can be a great contribution to some charity.
Yeah. That's very interesting, and I think there is a lot of thought in that. But also, taking ownership is one of the, I think, the big topics of this in general, but really interesting.
If there's no will, it goes to the state probably, right?
Generally, yeah. Yeah. And they'll come in and take over and assume it all.
Wow.
So this next one is, when is a trust a good option versus a will? And Peter had given us some examples about, you know, where he's been able to, you know, take on and know the wishes of that person and really be able to, you know, enact those in the best way, in the best, you know, spirit of that. And it really helped to make sure things don't have to go through things like probate if there are uncertainties. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about.
Well, you know, the only thing, I mean, trusts are there for a reason. If you want a third party to administer your estate, then, you know, do it. Make that happen. I mean, I have a friend literally who just died on January 1st, and she had a very small estate, and she wanted to leave it for her son, but the son was an adult that had emotional and psychological problems and addictions and gambling and all this stuff. So she was fraught with anxiety about, you know, she only had this little bit, but it was important for her to leave it for her only child. And, you know, the only option for her is to leave it with, you know, create a trust and identify a trustee so that they can distribute it. And that works for people.
Question,
For example, yeah.
what is the difference when you said, with your house, instead of leaving a house to my 4 children?
You can do that. I mean,
What's
so
the-
transfer
what's
on
the
death
other
deed,
Because
you can,
that's what I've done.
yeah,
I got 4 kids and
Yeah.
each get a quarter.
yeah. I mean,
They get the chainsaws and
Yeah.
cut the house in
Yeah.
pieces.
I was wondering the same thing, is if it's been a trust, they have to sell it.
well, unless your
Somebody
benefactors
buys them out.
decide that one is gonna buy the other one out, or,
Sure.
All right,
Do that pretty well.
health directives. I
right.
think this is our last one, or wrap it
Right.
up with this one.
So is this the 5 wishes shtick, or is this just the general?
This is mostly what we were talking about with, like, the do not resuscitate. This is
Right.
really where we were gonna discuss that, but I think we've really had a good conversation about that, in general. And just making sure that those forms are signed, you know, that's a really important aspect. You might have the form, but if it's not signed, it then isn't considered like legal and abided by. So that was really what we were, you know, wanting to kind of have be an open discussion at that point. So people are ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's a good idea to just have an advanced healthcare directive.
Especially when people are not married. or gay couples,
Right.
things like that.
Exactly. Or, I mean, I was in the hospital yesterday with a procedure, and I had to fill out 4 different times. Did I have a living will? Where was it? Where my, did my doctor have a copy of it? Blah, blah, blah. So, it's just good to have done, and it's not that difficult.
So we've come up on our last 10 minutes, which is crazy, but so we're gonna breeze through what we had planned for our kind of workshop, and then we really encourage you to stay after, continue to ask questions. Peter has answers, Gail has answers, we just like to chat. And then we've also got books for sale in the lobby afterward as well. So thank you, Peter, for that.
My pleasure, thanks.
I'd like to applaud you for your little documentary. I thought
Thank
it was very
you.
well done.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. So going from kind of this very tactical discussion, paperwork, this is still in that same vein, but we wanted to talk about a document that we've learned about recently that's called the 5 Wishes. And this is a document that is like a living will. And it's really, I think, a great way to think about it, about more of the heart and the soul, the things that you want to think about related to you and how you want to be cared for. So we thought we would just go through the basics of the document. The document was actually created by a fella named Jim Towie, who worked with Mother Teresa in Washington, D.C. for 12 years in the hospice care space. And so he worked with the American Bar Association. So the document really does, have a really, I think, well formatted and well thought through. And it's actually a really cool thing to possibly do with your family. I'm actually going to do it this year when I go home for the holidays. I'm going to have these 5 wishes and make a conversation that I can and learn about what my siblings and my mother want and what matters to them when it comes to these topics. I think it'll help us learn a lot about each other and grow and become, even more connected and make sure those wishes come true for them. So with the 5 wishes, it is this simple. You can do it online at 5wishes.org, and it's $5 to do it even like that. Peter, if you buy a book, he will give you a 5 wishes as well, and you can complete it. And it really covers just some very high-level topics that we'll go through. And this first one is the wish for your person. And this is the person that you want to take care of the decisions for you when you are no longer able to do that for yourself. And one of the interesting things that, I thought about with this one and we discussed when we were putting this together is that might not necessarily be your significant other or someone that just normally makes sense in the family. You really want to think about someone that will stand up for your rights, for example, with that do not resuscitate. They are going to ensure that what you wanted will be taken care of and directed. So it's just an interesting thing to kind of wrestle with and think about when you're identifying who you would want to really make those decisions on your behalf. It's a really easy form. This is what it looks like, and you just complete who that person would be. And then what's really excellent
Shouldn't you ask that person before
would be a good thing to do to make sure that they're in the loop on this. What you also get to do through this is, and possibly have this discussion with whomever you are determining to take that responsibility on, is you have a list of just options that they give you, and then they always give you options to fill in your own ideas. But here are some examples of what this person's responsibility would be if they would be the decision maker for you. Make choices for me about my medical care or services like tests, medicine, or surgery. Consent to admission to an assisted living facility, hospital, hospice, or nursing home for me. Make the decision to request, take away, or not give medical treatments, including artificially provided foods, water, to keep me alive. Donate usable organs or tissues of mine as allowed by law. Take any legal action needed to care for my wishes. And it goes on. So these are just kind of the things that would be bestowed upon the person that you would ask to take that responsibility. And again, it gives you opportunities to add, and if something on there doesn't fit, you just cross right through it. And that then doesn't mean that that person takes on that responsibility for your wishes. This form also, all you need to do is have it signed by yourself and 2 witnesses, and that actually makes it binding. There are multiple states, New Mexico being one. There's still a few that are outlying that do not take this by law. And there's only like 3 states that require a notary. Mexico, this signed with witnesses is considered a legal document that you can have executed for you. So it seems very simple and easy and somewhat, I think, a nice way to have these discussions. The next wish is the kind of medical treatment that I want or do not want. And these often are focused around the kind of life support and the things that you would want to consider in an emergency is often what this is focused on. It does give you kind of 4 different areas, and you kind of check through what you would want depending on the scenario of when this would need to be referenced. And those are when you're close to death. Do I want to have life support treatment? The other option, I do not want to have life support treatment. And another option, I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it can help me. And then another one scenario where you're going to have similar 3 different options to choose from. If I'm in a coma and not expected to wake up or recover, do I want to receive life support treatment? Do I not? Do I want to have a doctor consulted? Another is permanent brain damage, and it lets you make those decisions again. And then it has, again, another time and place where you can fill out and think about those different, where you might say, I want life support. Maybe in this scenario, I would choose a different course of action.
So stuff we never think about, but I mean, it makes for a great conversation over a glass of wine.
It does.
Or, a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And it gets, you thinking about and considering what your options might be.
Wish 3 is my wish for how comfortable I want to be. And again, this gives you the option to cross out things that just don't fit well and you don't feel comfortable with, and then move forward with the ones that do. And just a few examples of what they have listed here is I wish to have personal care like shaving, nail clipping, hair brushing, and teeth brushing as long as they do not cause me pain or discomfort. Another is I wish to have religious readings and love poems read to me when I am near my death. And there's multiples that fit into this category as well. And again, giving you options to choose ones that are personal to you as well.
I always pick out the one that says, I would like to be massaged with warm oils
Yes.
as often as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't wait until you're dying to get a good massage.
Yeah.
Wish number 4 is my wish for how I want people to treat me. Examples with this one is, I wish to be cared for with kindness, cheerfulness, not sadness. Another is, I wish to have pictures of my loved ones in my room and near my bed. And another, I want to die in my home, if that can be done. And finally, that final of the 5 wishes is my wish for what I want my loved ones to know. And I think this one is wonderful, and it does give a lot of room beyond what is shared and the options that they give you to select. And those things are, I wish to have my family and friends know that I love them. I wish to be forgiven for the times that I have hurt my family, friends, or others. And this also has many more that can be contributed. So I think it's a wonderful way, and I kind of want to put a challenge out there to think about doing this over the course of the next few months, year, and let us know how it went, how those conversations, or if you learned something, if you felt differently, and we'd love to know, and if we, and it'll help us continue to be able to hopefully share these stories with others as well. And then finally, again, I think is just so cool about this is that it is so simple to be able to then just have the witnesses there sign. You sign it, and then this is a completed document. Definitely encourage you to give this to your medical, your doctors and people that, will need to know these things that are personal to you, your family members. And then also, I think Peter is going to be able to show this, they have an ability to then have a wallet-sized version that you can have put into your wallet and have as well.
I laminated mine.
Yeah. So really that is just an overview of the 5 wishes and another part of this whole big planning process that we all need to consider. And with that, we do have at the end, Peter will have his books, and we'll also have some of those forms available as well as the 5 wishes if you're interested. And then we're here to mingle and talk. Please stay around. We have tons of snacks and food. There are forms that we've left on the tables there with information about us and our journey. Thea and I just did a big strategy session yesterday, and we have a few big goals ahead of us on what we want to achieve over the course of the next few months, and we hope...
Can you share those?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we, I guess one of the biggest things we're going to start doing is we're going to start what we're going to be calling the Ever-Ending Story series. And we're looking to find people that are working in this space that we can tell their story and get the word out in maybe a bit more, fun way, hidden audience that's maybe more that has not thought about this. We're quite young to be digging deep into this, and we feel like that's maybe going to be an advantage for us to tap into a whole new group of people.
What kind of people?
People that are, maybe in their 20s and 30s that have aging parents and have grandparents and don't really... Siblings, things that people that
Partners.
have had these conversations.
Yeah, one of our goals is to get millennials to think about their own deaths.
Perfect,
basically, to own their deaths. And so I think definitely whatever content we can create that's going to resonate with younger people and starting to think about this now and starting to just kind of get it into the lexicon is for sure the overarching goal. And then tactically, in addition to sort of highlighting artists and chefs and people who are working in this space with human interest micro-documentaries and write-ups, we're also going to start a blog series called Best Places to Live and Die. So we're going to be looking not just about the cool things about living in a place, but what makes a place a unique place to die. Maybe they have more access to green burials. Maybe dying at home is...
Crestone in Colorado.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Peter's writing our first blog. But anyway, those are just a couple of the things that we have on deck.
Caves in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Sky caves and of course we'll have to travel to all these places to
Right,
write these blogs, right?
Yeah.
So those are a couple of things. And we really hope to continue to do book talks like this with Peter and with other authors in other major markets as well. Emily's in Austin, I'm in San Francisco, so we'll for sure be doing things at home. And then, take it on the road, ideally.
Before we wrap it up, I want everybody to know that Gail Rubin is sort of the queen of death.
The doyen.
The doyen of
The
death.
doyen of death.
And she organizes an annual Before I Die conference that is essentially statewide now. Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Taos,
Espanola.
Espanola.
I want to go to Las Cruces this year too.
Yeah. So anyway, it's an amazing event. It happens once a year. Lots of artisans participate and show off things like urns. If everybody turns around and looks at that back corner, beautiful artisans that make these incredible urns. Death doulas make presentations. I think last session there was somebody that walked everybody through an advanced healthcare directive. They're very comprehensive and super interesting and fun. So,
and writing your own obituary too.
And writing your own obituary, yeah.
Movies, field trips.
Yeah.
We usually hold them in funeral homes, and we did hold it here at Berardinelli for the Santa Fe Day.
Yeah, it was fantastic to go across the street and go into the crematorium and it was really an eye-opener and very educational, so, yeah.
Do you really end up with just that much ash?
It's kind of a big old coffee can, but yeah,
Just like in the Big Lebowski.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay, save out your crowns.
yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.